Hey everyone, Mr. B here. It was good to see some of you at the parade today. Um, uh, miss you guys, and um, seeing you is good, but it also makes me realize how much I miss the rest of you. So, um, yeah. Anyway, starting our new book, and it's called Good Luck, Arizona Man. It's by Rex Benedict. It's out of print, so you may or may not be able to find a copy to read along. But it's a book that my father read to me when I was in probably third or fourth grade, and I just thought it was such a good book. Everybody must have heard about it, and very few people evidently have. So um, here it is. Let's start out with chapter 1. Some causes of good fortune. Excuse me. Some causes of sweet fortune. Here on Apache wings of truth begins my tale. May it be worthy. My name's Arizona Slim. 'Tain't my real name or my only name, but that don't matter. I've passed the rise and fall of many moons with the mescaleros, them's Apaches, and I observe the tribal customs and taboos, especially when they're useful to me. Apaches don't like to use real names. It's bad luck. And nothing scares an Apache like bad luck. In fact, nothing scares an Apache but bad luck. Except two or three things what I won't mention, it being bad luck to do so. They got all kinds of sayings in the tribe about bad luck, but they're hard for me to turn from the Apache language to my natural tongue, which honesty forces me to admit is a little unnatural to me, but which I take proud delight in the strict and careful use of. Anyway, Apaches don't like bad luck, so they spend a lot of time, about half their lives, I'd say, naming and renaming things, themselves mostly, just to keep their lives protected from the ravages of sorry fortune. As I indirectly said, I was not born a pure Apache, but of a race far more fair and long of limb, and, the old chiefs used to say, more cunning too. I am, however, careful with my luck, and I've always had good luck too, which the mescaleros say is hard for their heads to understand, considering my impurity. The old chiefs always used to tell me that my good luck came from the changing of my name when I was still too young to remember. But I couldn't put my faith in that, 'cause secretly I did remember. I had a memory of a name which I was sure was mine, along with two or three other memories. The main one being a beautiful grassy knoll what stuck like a vision in my mind. My preference in the matter is that it was the magic in my first Apache name that made my fortunes ever sweet as summer breezes on the mesa. You see, I originally possessed in the remote moontime of my pre-Apache days an American name. High or low in honor, I cannot rightly say, but when a raiding party of mescaleros under old Chief Wickiup found me, or so they always said, tribeless and alone in the rainbow land of Arizona, they took me back with them to their new home in New Mexico, and they gave me the tribal name of Good Luck, Arizona Man. Of course, I couldn't use the name, it being bad luck to breathe it out loud, but I kept it ever pleasant in the secret regions of my mind, along with the memory of my original name, often wondering about them both and about my life before the mescaleros found me. Moons passed, and my wonder grew. I soon learned that the Apaches kept such mysteries as darkly hidden as they try to keep the mystery of their secret gold. I wasn't as curious about the gold as I was about myself, and even as a little Apache kid, I knew more about the former than the latter. Not that the Apaches can't keep a secret, it's just they gossip all the time, and kids listen. And then there was all those tribal legends, what some old chief was always recounting and sometimes forgetting himself in the process, if he was real old, and telling all the secrets accidental like. The legends would get all mixed up with the truth, and the truth would get all mixed up with the secrets, and I don't know how anybody ever kept them straight. Even as kids, we used to play games about that gold and about the Spanish conquistadores who came to get it. I was always Coronado, for the color of my hair, I think. The other kids would tell me wild tales of golden cities and lead me around in circles, pointing this way and that, and hiding their laughter behind their hands while sending me off across the desert in the wrong direction. And then we went to school, and Miss Utter Delight, as we called our teacher, taught us more about the conquistadores and the golden cities and a lot of other things what none of us much cared about. By the time I could read and write, I think I could have told you how to find the gold of the Guadalupes, as it was called, but I couldn't have told you a thing about myself, except that I was a fair haired Apache kid with a beautiful name I couldn't speak aloud for fear of bringing down ruin upon myself for the rest of my natural life. And so my curiosity grew. But a few years later, when I had got some experience in the poetical and, as the Navajos say, devious ways of Apache reasoning, I put my Apache lore and my school lore and all my natural sneakiness to work, and I tricked old Wickiup into a certain secret revelation about the unsolved riddle of my beginnings. What I found out would have devastated a normal human being. By which I mean anyone who wasn't at least part Apache. What old Wickiup said, or more rightly, what he didn't say, set my mind to soaring high on eagle's wings and started me on a trail so wild that only an Apache could have followed it, and only a good luck man like me could have survived to tell the tale. Yeah, I knew you'd like it. It's very poetical. Not a real word. It's poetic. But Arizona Slim would say poetical. Chapter 2. What Old Wickiup Didn't Say. I'll tell you what old Wickiup didn't say in just a minute. First, I got to make confession, like Padre Glorio used to tell sinners at the mission to do. I have said I tricked the chief. I've spoken rash. Maybe I tricked him, and maybe I didn't. To this day, I don't know for sure, and I got no wish to brag, 'cause that's bad luck too. The chief guy had got a little infirm in the head by then, and maybe he let the secret slip out unawares. You could never tell about the old ones in those days. They all seemed a little crazy in the head. He was probably older than Geronimo, who was still alive at the time, and his mind was always slipping around poetic like somewhere in the misty times of bygone moons what nobody else in the tribe had any remembrance of unless it was his wife, Mad Woman. Also, he doted on me with Apache fondness, due, I always thought, to my impure extraction. But considering all that happened to me as a result of that moment, if old Wickiup had really been fond of me, he wouldn't have let the secret out, no matter how infirm or crazy he was. So, maybe it was the natural cunning of my race, as the Apaches say of Navajos and white men, what brought me the revelation. That is one of the darkest mysteries of my life, and I will be pondering it at the moonset of my days. Now, what old Wickiup didn't say. We was sitting summer soft one morning near Mescalero town outside old Wickiup's Wickiup, and through the brush and bramble, and though his brush and bramble hut looked like 100 years of bad luck, His Apache soul, I could tell, was just beginning to soar in summer sweet agreement with the earth on which his bones reposed in squatted peace. He was about to relieve himself of some of the burdens of tribal knowledge for the benefit of men less old and wise, which in his case meant everybody. Already he was mumbling low and sing-song, like about the old noon times and the purity of ancient things and the need for the young to listen to the songs of the old. Na, na, na. That's what he sounded like while swaying on his blanket and thinking of what to say next. Na, na, na. He had a good audience, kids and dogs mostly, the latter always howling along with any old chief who happened to be singing, especially on the high notes. Apache dogs like to howl. They howl all the time, except when someone's dying. I don't know how they know. In the crowd of kids was Fantail and his brother Poop, the only two Apaches I ever knew who'd use their real names, the names being so impure and un-Apache that it didn't matter anyhow. Their luck never was much good. Neither was that of Missintoe, the reservation sheriff. His name wasn't pure Apache either. He'd got it as a result of damages done to himself with a pistol while trying to arrest somebody. In back a little ways was old Mad Woman, cursing low and keening and draping old Wickiup's laundry over a greasewood brush to dry. Some of the elders of the tribe was squatted around too, just to jog old Wickiup's mind if it trailed off somewhere, or wake him up if he fell asleep, which sometimes happened. Na 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 na. His voice was rising higher. Na, 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 na. Old Wickiup was a slow starter in the songs he sang. But once he got to soaring, and the rhythm was right, and the weather was good, and the people around him was making sign for him to clear up something by repeating it, he kind of lost himself in the clouds of poetry. That was when he'd seem to get to the legends and the secrets and even the gossip all mixed up together. Na, 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 na. The chant was rising higher now, and the dogs was howling good. Na, 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 na. His chant told of the tribe's beginnings at the ends of the earth in northern lands where, he said, the world had started too. Then he sloped along the mountains in migration to the present homeland, his tale disrupted only now and then by someone making sign or by the protests of the dogs, neither of which he paid much attention to. Na, 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 na. I kept my hand ready to make sign. Anything you didn't understand, you could make sign for the chief to repeat. With old Wickiup, you had to make sign at the exact right moment. If you signed too soon or too late, you might just as well have not signed at all. I watched him close, waiting patiently. And on he went, soaring good now, 'cause he was approaching more recent glories and the heroes of living memory. His memory, of course. The dogs was howling louder too now, and so was old Mad Woman. That always happened when she thought old Wickiup was about to give away some tribal secret or another. Like, for instance, the location of the Apache gold. I guess you couldn't much blame her for howling like a coyote every time the chief got careless in his tale, 'cause that gold was not only supposed to be kept a secret, but sacred too. The same was true, I found out later, of my origins. Na 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 na. He was getting poetical now, like he always did towards the end of his devotions, mixing up names and places in wild confusion, jumping around a lot in time, and making little revelations that only a quick Apache ear could catch, and only then if it knew what it was listening for, which mine did. Still, patiently, I waited. And then my moment came. I'll always believe it was my instincts what told me, Just as he soared off through the treetops of his memory and sailed into the rainbow land on the wings of heroic names like Cochise and Mangas Colorados and Victorio and Nanya, I signed for him to repeat. When an Apache starts singing about Cochise and others of living memory, he's also chanting about certain white people of living memory. My timing was good. Couldn't have been better. I knew how long it took him to stop. He had to go on down through Geronimo and 3 or 4 other grandfathers before the sign from my lifted hand could reach his mind and halt him in his flight. Madwoman knew that too. Her howls rose, and she looked at me with what I rightly took for murder in her eyes. Na, 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 na. There was something poetical, mumbling then, and then some words about the summer when the Apaches found a good luck man. I had him. I signed for a repeat, for more details. With every sign I made, Madwoman screamed. Now, the rest of the tribe was getting nervous too, sensing as they did that Apache games, subtle and deceitful, was being played. Na, 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 na. Old Wickiup soared away into the deserts and mountains of Arizona, mixing up the beauties and the names in fine disorder. He soared for a long time, naming every rock and tree in the land where they had found the good luck man. I discounted everything he said and signed again. Now, he was in a kind of dreamlike frenzy, forgetting himself. This was the moment when he might say anything, let slip all the secrets. Madwoman hissed and howled and flopped her laundry over the bushes. Na, 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 na. Old Wickiup flowed into tales of the Rio Grande, cursing the Mexicans and other ancient enemies as he went. But I knew he was still on the subject of the good luck man. And, I thought, the gold, too. I raised my hand and signed again. He began a long lament about the strayed Apaches in Oklahoma, scolding them in passing for marrying out of the tribe. I signed again. Madwoman was screaming steady now and glaring at me with that murderous look in her eye. Then, so quickly I almost missed it, it happened. Old Wickiup did a crazy thing. Crazy even for an Apache. He swept on the wings of eagles over the length and breadth of the whole Apache world, ancient and modern, naming each place in the old manner and not leaving out a stream or a bush or a lizard. Not leaving out a thing, it seemed, even down to the rattlesnakes and bears and pumas, until there, finally, it was there for everyone to hear by its silence. The secret. Dead Man's Gulch. His lips had not pronounced those words, and now his song was ended. I, Good Luck Arizona Man, had been found at Dead Man's Gulch in the Guadalupe Mountains of Texas, and that, I knew, was where the gold was, too. Things got a little hysterical then. A mad woman wailing and tearing her hair in signs of grief, the kids clapping for joy, the dogs baying, and Missin' Joe drawing his gun and starting to shoot at what I suppose he thought was danger in the air. I made no more sign. It wouldn't have done any good anyway. Old Wickiup had gone to sleep, sitting straight up, sublime in his dignity. Chapter 3. Plotting. Plotting. No Apache ever does anything, no matter how crazy, without a reason. Whatever old Wickiup's reason was for making the revelation, I couldn't figure it out. The only thing what made sense, Apache sense, was that the chief had forgot where the gold was, lost it, and now wanted someone to find it for him so he could die in peace. He knew how curious I was about my origins. I had asked him many times about them, and he had always said, "Be patient, my son, be patient." Maybe he had mislaid that secret too. How? Well, he could forget anything. If he forgot about something long enough, it had a way of going out of existence. The wonder now was that he even remembered that he had forgot. One thing was certain. He had tied the two secrets, the place of my origins and the gold, together in a knot so tight that I couldn't think of one without thinking of the other. And I'm sorry to say that I always ended up thinking more about the gold than about my origins, no matter how I started out. I guess it had something to do with my impure blood, because a pure Apache don't feel the same enchantments that other people feel about gold. They like to keep it buried, knowing as they do the grief and trouble what comes with it. And then there was that curse which every little Apache kid knows about from the time he can crawl. Whoever finds the gold of the Guadalupes must die. I'd heard it all my life, and all my life I'd longed to know if it was true. Because if there's one thing I can't stand, it's an unsolved mystery. I had to find out, not only about the gold, but about myself as well. So I set about to plot my departure from Mescalero town. It pleases me to say that I did my plotting with cold-blooded Apache guile, by which I mean I went about it like a pureblood. Apache plotting, like Apache thinking, is poetical and devious. Everyone admires an artful plotter, even his enemies. And anyone who starts to plot always discovers that he's got enemies. I knew that Apache Eyes was watching me, though I didn't always know whose. I could feel them in the air around the trading post, and from the wickiups down the hill, and sometimes from the wooden shacks along the creek. I lived in one of the wooden shacks. Being a good Apache, I didn't pay much attention to where I lived in those days, one place being about as good as another. I did pay attention to the watching eyes, though. I like to know who my enemies are. I think some of my white eye nature came out in my plotting too. I not only dusted up my trail and laid false sign in all directions like a pure Apache, but I also put the refinements of my educated mind to work in what I'd noticed was the white eye way of working out deceptions. Like most things between the two races, who never did understand each other, they're exact opposites. Apaches plot poetical. White men plot methodical. Naturally, I used a little of both, liking as I always do to have every possible advantage. For the first time in my life, I guess I was maybe 12, maybe 13 at the time, and tall for my age, I had me some regrets that I hadn't studied harder at the reservation school. I began to see why white eye kids go to school so long and study so hard. It's where they learn to plot. They use facts and figures the way an Apache uses his eyes and ears and nose. They also write things down and keep them straight. No white-eyed chief would ever have lost a gold mine like old Wickiup did. And if he had lost it or mislaid it or forgot about it, he wouldn't have had to put on a big show the way the chief did to try and get somebody to find it for him. He would have just looked at a book or a map or a paper of some kind and frowned the way they do and put his finger on a certain spot and maybe grunted a little, like a true chief. And then he would have gone on and got it. Oh, after the necessary plotting, of course. But I've never been one to linger long upon regret. Even as a boy, I let it slip into the desert wind like withered cactus flowers, never to return. And so, when I had misled every Indian in the tribe into thinking what I was going to Window Rock to haggle with the Navajos for a silver belt buckle what I badly needed, I turned my mind to more methodical deceits. Though I knew every rock and bush on the Mescalero reservation and every cactus plant and grain of sand on the surrounding desert, there was a lot I didn't know about the Guadalupe Mountains. I knew it was a wild place, full of wild and crazy men, all looking for the gold, and all probably being looked for by Texas sheriffs. I'd heard stories about a madman named El Lobo, what fancied the mountains and the gold belonged to him and would shoot anybody that crossed his sights. It was said that he had been there so long he'd forgotten how to talk. And there was another tale about a spooky nobody about a spook nobody had ever seen who was said to travel only at night and carry a human head or in his hands. There was lots of stories, and I believed all of them. Most of the Apaches did, though not many of them had been any closer than I had to Dead Man's Gulch. Even though the Guadalupes was the ancient Mescalero homeland, no one but the old chiefs knew much about the place. The Texans being mean about Apaches and not permitting them to go there even for ceremonies. Of course, that didn't mean they didn't go. There's no place you can keep an Apache from going to if he's got a mind to go. I knew the old chiefs sometimes went down there, and gossip in the camp said they always brought back a few chunks of the gold, though I never knew anybody who had actually seen one. But I'd never been there, and my cautious nature wouldn't let me set foot on a piece of earth I didn't know as well as the palm of my hand. So I slipped down the hill and through the window of the reservation school. Except for desks and books, the school was empty. I didn't know if it was a regular school day or not. Apache kids don't ever seem to learn the regular days from the others. At least, that's the way it used to be. We'd go when we felt like it, and we wouldn't if we didn't. I started first with the maps. I meant to take a look at the Guadalupes and at the trail of Coronado and his conquistadors. Just as I was getting going good, I sensed I wasn't alone. I couldn't tell where she came from, but suddenly there she was, standing right behind her desk and saying, "Arizona boy, what an utter delight." No Apache jumps, and I didn't jump. But she did take me off my guard. "The conquistadors," I said. "What an utter delight," she said. "If you will just take your seat." One thing about Miss Utter Delight, she was always ready to teach. Anybody, anytime, school day or not, night or day, winter or summer. All she had to do was catch you in that schoolroom. What an utter delight! I thought she was going to faint with pleasure. "Shall we start with Don Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, vain seeker of the 7 fabled cities of Cibola?" "Zuni deceitments," I said. "Deceits," she corrected. "How come Coronado not find gold?" I asked. I was using my dumb voice. The dumber a kid was, the more Miss Utter Delight liked him. She couldn't resist a half-wit. I put on my dumbest look and used my dumbest voice. "How come, Miss Utter Delight?" I asked. She blinked. "Because no gold existed," she said. "Coronado's brain was doubtless affected by our desert heat." "I think gold exists," I said. "What an utter delight! Why did the conquistadors not find it? They searched frantically for years and years." "'Cause Coronado and conquistadors not know Pueblo or Apache tongue. Pueblos and Apaches make jokes. Look on map." To my surprise, she looked. "Look for Guadalupes," I said. "How come conquistadors not looking Guadalupes for gold? Stupid, maybe?" "Not stupid," she said, looking at the maps. "Crazy, maybe?" Not crazy either. She was real busy now, not paying much attention to me or the way I talked, even forgetting to correct me. Something, I didn't know what, had caught her fancy. She put down the map and took up a book and began to turn the pages as if she knew what she was looking for. "You remember El Turco?" I asked her. She looked up in surprise. "What an utter delight that you should remember El Turco. My teaching has not been in vain." "What about him?" "He knew where gold was. Look on map." "El Turco wanted to take Coronado to Guadalupes. He said gold was there. El Turco was only Indian telling Coronado truth, and Coronado killed him." Now she had a map in one hand and a book in the other, and I could tell by the little trembling she made that she was nervous. She always got that way when she was about to discover something that she would call an utter delight. I think she had forgot about me. She was mumbling to herself as she turned the pages and picked up the maps. Do you suppose, do you suppose, that's what she was saying. Do you suppose? Then she got out another book and turned a lot of pages fast, still saying, do you suppose? Then checking the book with the map and blinking her eyes, and then running her long finger up and down and around in a kind of circle on the map, and bringing it to a stop and standing there dead silent for about as long as it takes the moon to rise over Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Then, very quietly, as if to herself, she said, Espejo. I thought she said a dirty Apache word, 'cause there's one that sounds a lot like it. Espejo, she said again. Antonio de Espejo. Look here. She was nervous, excited, as if she had found some long lost secret. She pointed to the map, a small one inside a book. There are the Guadalupes, and there's Espejo's trail, the dotted lines that form a circle. Was he a conquistador? Yes, several years after the time of Coronado. He was looking for the gold too. You see, he made a large circle around the Guadalupes. Look. I looked, and what I saw caused little ripples to run over me. Exactly in the middle of that circle by Espejo, or whatever his name was Dead Man's Gulch, the gold. He had come close, very close. Only one thing had kept him from finding it. He had tried to go into Dead Man's Gulch from the wrong direction. I knew enough about those mountains to know that you don't get the Dead Man's Gulch from the west. You've got to go in from the east, the Pecos River side. Apache gold, like all Apache secrets, has to be gone after backwards. That night, before the moon was up, I slipped shadow soft back into the schoolroom, found the book, and expertly tore out the map. Okay, I hope you're liking it so far. Have more tomorrow.